Picture this. You're boarding a flight, just like any other day, but this time, something is off. You feel the eyes of the flight attendants, hear the whispers, and before you know it, the police are called. Why? What could possibly have gone wrong? This isn't just an isolated incident. It's a story that'll make you question everything you know about injustice in the skies. A black couple, just trying to get to their destination, was subjected to unfair treatment. But that's only the beginning. You won't believe what happens next and why. Just 7 minutes later, the flight attendant responsible for the chaos is removed from the flight. Stay tuned, because what comes next will leave you stunned. Welcome back to Mr. Robert's Story, where we dive deep into some of the most eye-opening, real-life events. Today, we have a story that not only captures a shocking moment of racial injustice, but also highlights how swiftly things can escalate and how quickly they can be turned around. A black couple, ready for a routine flight, ended up at the center of a heated confrontation when a flight attendant called the police on them. But what happened in the following 7 minutes will change everything you thought you knew about accountability in the air. Stick around, because this story is one you won't want to miss. It all started like any other routine flight. A couple, excited to start their trip, boards the plane. They find their seats, settle in, and prepare for a smooth journey. Everything seems fine, but as the cabin doors close and the plane is about to taxi down the runway, an uncomfortable tension begins to build. It wasn't in the air yet, but the discomfort had already started. The flight attendants began to pay an unusually high amount of attention to this couple. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a few glances and exchanges of words, but it was soon clear that something was different about this interaction. What could have been a simple, routine flight experience for the couple quickly turned into something much more unsettling. A few moments after takeoff, the flight attendants began to speak more assertively with the couple. There were whispers exchanged between the staff, some of which were directed toward the passengers. The couple, naturally confused and concerned, tried to keep calm. They were merely looking forward to reaching their destination, but the flight attendants' behavior made it hard to ignore the growing unease in the air. The situation escalated quickly when one of the flight attendants informed the couple that they needed to move from their assigned seats. No explanation was given, just a stern request to relocate. As passengers, they expected a simple issue with their seats. Maybe a mistake had been made with the booking, or perhaps there had been a misunderstanding. But what happened next would make them realize that this wasn't about seating at all. When the couple asked why they were being asked to move, the flight attendant's response was vague and dismissive. There was no apology, no clarity. Instead, they were met with a cold, almost hostile tone. The couple began to feel like they were being targeted for reasons beyond the simple misunderstanding of a seating issue. Was this a racial issue? Could this have been the result of prejudice? Or was there another underlying factor? This is when things started to take a dangerous turn. One of the flight attendants walked away, but not before giving the couple a look that made them feel as though they were doing something wrong. They tried to shake off the feeling, telling themselves it must be a mistake. But deep down, they knew something wasn't right. Moments later, the situation escalated further when the flight attendant came back with a much more serious tone. The couple, now anxious, was informed that they were being reported to the captain. "We need to have this matter addressed immediately," the flight attendant said coldly. The couple tried to explain themselves, but the flight attendant wouldn't let them speak. Instead, the attendants started gathering in a huddle, exchanging looks and murmurs. Without warning, a flight attendant made the decision that would spark the entire chain of events. She called the police. The couple was stunned. The plane hadn't even left the ground yet, and now the authorities were involved in what seemed to be nothing more than an unjustified accusation. They hadn't even been given a clear reason for why they were being targeted, only that they were being reported for some unexplained reason. The couple, visibly upset, tried to remain calm, but the anxiety was building. What could they do? What was happening? All they wanted was to enjoy their flight, but instead, they found themselves at the center of a situation that was spiraling out of control. The tension between the couple and the flight attendants was palpable. There was no real understanding, no willingness to listen, just a feeling of being wronged and misunderstood. It was at this point, with the police on the way, that the couple began to realize this wasn't just about a seat or a simple misunderstanding. The underlying issues of race and bias were now at play. The flight attendants' actions felt disproportionate and suspicious, and the couple was left wondering if their race had played a role in the escalation of this incident. As the minutes ticked by, the feeling of injustice grew stronger. It seemed impossible that a simple misunderstanding could result in the police being called. But in this moment, the couple could only hold their breath and hope for the best as the chaos unfolded around them. Little did they know that in just 7 minutes, this story would take an unexpected turn. As the tension mounted, the passengers on the plane began to notice the situation unfolding in the front of the cabin. Whispers spread like wildfire, and some passengers even looked nervously over their seats to see what was going on. The couple, still sitting in their seats, began to feel the weight of the eyes on them, sensing the judgment in the air. The flight attendants, seemingly emboldened by their authority, waited for the arrival of the police, who had been called to the scene just minutes earlier. The couple sat in stunned silence, unsure of what to do next. How could they have ended up in a situation like this? They were no troublemakers, just two people looking forward to their journey. As they anxiously glanced at each other, trying to figure out their next move, the police arrived. The doors of the airplane opened, and the officers walked down the aisle toward the couple, with all eyes now on them. For a moment, the couple felt like they were in a nightmare. What could the officers possibly do? They hadn't broken any laws, and they had done nothing to deserve being reported. The tension was palpable. The couple, caught off guard, had to deal with the anxiety of an entire airplane watching their every move, while the flight attendants stood behind them, watching intently. It felt like they were on trial. The officers, who were aware that they were dealing with an on-the-spot situation, tried to remain calm. They spoke to the flight attendants first, gathering the details of what had happened. The flight attendants explained their version of the situation, though they left out crucial details about the circumstances leading up to their call for help. The couple sat, waiting to hear what would happen next, unsure of how they could explain their side of the story. The police officers turned to the couple, asking them a few basic questions. They were polite, yet it was clear that the couple was being treated like suspects rather than passengers. The couple tried to explain their version of events, detailing how they had simply been asked to move from their seats for no clear reason, and how the flight attendants had become increasingly hostile. However, the police seemed skeptical, not fully understanding why the situation had escalated so quickly. There was an undeniable discomfort in the air, as if everyone, even the police, could sense something was off. What was even more frustrating was that the police didn't seem particularly interested in hearing the couple's side of the story. It was as if the flight attendants' version of events was enough to justify the police intervention. The couple could feel the weight of bias in the air, and they began to understand that their mere presence in the situation was playing a bigger role than they had realized. This wasn't just about a flight seating issue. It was about how quickly people could judge, based on their assumptions and prejudices, without fully understanding the facts. In this moment, the couple had to come to grips with a harsh reality. This wasn't just a matter of a flight gone wrong. It was a situation rooted in something deeper, something systemic. The way they were being treated wasn't just about the misunderstanding. It was about something far bigger than that. And this wasn't just a small misunderstanding. It had now become a public spectacle. The couple, trying to maintain their composure, was feeling the injustice weighing heavily on them, even as the police attempted to process the situation. But as the minutes passed and the officers continued to question them, the couple started to notice something unusual. They were being given no clear explanation for why they were being held up, why the authorities were involved, and why things had gotten so out of hand so quickly. There was a moment of realization. The flight attendants had escalated the situation to the point where it was no longer just a simple misunderstanding. It was now about public perception and the dynamics of power. As this realization sank in, the couple became even more determined to make it clear that they were not at fault. They hadn't caused any disturbance. They hadn't broken any rules. They were simply caught in a system that had misjudged them. The police, realizing they had little reason to keep the couple on board, finally started to back off. But that was just the beginning of a chain of events that would unfold in the next few minutes, taking this already tense situation to a shocking conclusion. The clock was ticking, and just 7 minutes after the police arrived, everything was about to change. Little did they know, The flight attendant who had called the authorities in the first place was about to face her own consequences for what she had done. And this is where the real story starts to take shape. The next few moments would leave everyone on board questioning not only the flight attendant's actions, but also the broader systems of discrimination that exist in all areas of society. Just when it seemed like the situation was on the verge of spiraling completely out of control, something unexpected happened. The officers, after realizing that the couple had done nothing wrong and that the call to the police was based on a misunderstanding at best and possibly prejudice at worst, began to speak with the flight crew in a more serious tone. What had started as a routine intervention quickly turned into a larger conversation about the flight attendant's behavior and the reason behind the police call. As the officers spoke with the flight attendants, they began to notice the discrepancies in their story. The flight attendants, who had initially been so certain that the couple was a threat, couldn't seem to justify their actions when questioned by law enforcement. The couple, who had remained calm and cooperative, started to see a shift in the air. The officers were no longer taking the flight attendant's side. Instead, they were scrutinizing the situation more carefully. The attention that had once been squarely on the couple was now shifting toward the flight attendants, who were beginning to feel the heat. It was then that the captain, who had been observing the situation from the cockpit, made an important decision. After hearing the details from the police officers and understanding the full scope of the situation, the captain decided to remove the flight attendant who had called the police. The decision wasn't made lightly, but it was clear that the attendant had caused unnecessary tension and escalated the situation without justification. Her actions had created a hostile environment, and the captain realized that it was now in the best interest of everyone involved to remove her from the flight. The flight attendant, clearly taken aback by the decision, was informed that she would no longer be able to serve on this flight. She was escorted off the plane, her face a mix of shock and frustration. It was clear that she hadn't expected things to unfold in this way, but her actions had consequences. The passengers on board, who had been silent observers up until this point, began to react. Some exchanged glances, while others whispered among themselves, processing what had just happened. The mood in the cabin had shifted from one of anxiety and confusion to one of tentative relief. For the couple, this moment felt like a small victory. They had been unjustly targeted, humiliated, and nearly involved in a legal incident because of a flight attendant's bias. But in this moment, they saw that justice was being served. The flight attendant, whose decision had caused so much turmoil, was now facing the consequences of her actions. The couple, although shaken by the events, couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication as they watched her leave the plane. The power dynamics had shifted, the flight attendant's authority had been revoked, and she was being held accountable for her role in the escalation. However, the story wasn't over yet. The couple, despite this small victory, still had to process everything that had just happened. They couldn't forget how quickly they had been judged and how easily their peaceful journey had been disrupted. The emotional toll of the entire experience weighed heavily on them. But in that moment, they realized that they weren't just passive victims in this situation. They were active participants in a larger conversation about fairness, race, and accountability. As the flight attendant was escorted off the plane, the passengers returned to their seats, though the atmosphere was far from normal. The couple exchanged glances with each other, quietly reflecting on what had just happened. They couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and disbelief. Relief that the situation had been defused, but disbelief that something so trivial could have spiraled out of control so quickly. The police, now satisfied that the couple had done nothing wrong, began to clear the scene. The flight attendants who had been involved in the altercation were now silent, realizing the gravity of the situation. The captain, who had made the decision to remove the flight attendant, gave a brief, apologetic message over the intercom, explaining that the matter had been resolved and that the flight would continue as scheduled. But what everyone in that cabin knew, deep down, was that this incident wasn't just about a single flight. It was about a pattern of behavior, about the biases that can shape people's actions and perceptions. It was about the fact that a flight attendant, armed with a sense of power and authority, could make a snap judgment based on nothing more than prejudice. It was about how quickly someone's life could be turned upside down because of an unjust accusation. As the plane finally began to taxi down the runway and the engines roared to life, the couple, although relieved, couldn't shake the feeling that they had just experienced something that would stay with them for a long time. They had survived this ordeal, but the emotional scars of the experience were not so easily erased. They looked out the window, trying to put it behind them, but knowing that this story was far from over. As the plane ascended into the sky and the couple settled back into their seats, they couldn't help but reflect on everything that had just happened. The shock of the police being called, the confusion, the tension in the air. It all seemed surreal. But in the midst of it all, they began to realize that this experience was much bigger than just a personal incident. It was a stark reminder of the inequalities that still exist, even in seemingly mundane situations like boarding a flight. The couple began discussing the incident quietly, processing the events in their own way. They had been targeted, not because of anything they had done, but because of the assumptions made about them based on their race. The flight attendant's decision to call the police had been rash and based on nothing but her own biases. It was a painful realization for them, but it also opened their eyes to the harsh reality that many people of color face on a daily basis. While they had been vindicated in this particular situation, they knew that many others don't always get that same chance. Not everyone has the opportunity to have their case heard, especially when the odds are stacked against them. The couple felt a mix of gratitude for the way the police had handled the situation, but also a deep sadness for those who aren't given the same treatment. In the days following the incident, the couple's story made waves in the media. It became a conversation starter, with many people weighing in on the situation. Some were outraged by how quickly the flight attendant had escalated the situation, while others took the opportunity to reflect on the deeper issues of bias and racism that are pervasive in society. The couple, although relieved that the flight attendant had been held accountable, knew that their fight wasn't over. They had experienced firsthand the way that racial prejudice can shape interactions, and they vowed to keep speaking out about it. They felt compelled to use their platform to raise awareness about these issues, hoping that by sharing their story, they could inspire change. This wasn't just about what had happened on a single flight. It was about shining a light on the biases that exist in everyday life and challenging those biases when they arise. The couple had been through something traumatic, but they knew that by sharing their story, they could help spark a larger conversation about fairness, equality, and justice. As the flight finally touched down at their destination, the couple felt a sense of resolve. They had endured, and they had come out stronger on the other side. But the journey didn't end there. The real work was just beginning. This incident on the flight wasn't just about the confrontation between a couple and a flight attendant. It became a symbol of something much larger. It was about racial prejudice, the power dynamics that often go unchecked, and the need for accountability in everyday situations. The couple, after enduring a frustrating and unjust ordeal, found themselves not just victims of a mistake, but also part of a broader conversation that we all need to engage in. As the situation unfolded, it became clear that standing up for what's right, even in moments when the world seems stacked against you, can make a difference. The couple, despite being wronged, remained calm, cooperative, and resolute. Their ability to handle the situation with dignity helped turn the tide, leading to the removal of the flight attendant who had escalated things unfairly. The most striking part of this story is that it wasn't just the flight attendant who was held accountable. It was a moment of realization for everyone involved: passengers, flight crew, police officers, and the public, that actions rooted in bias must be questioned and corrected. This is a reminder that our society still has a long way to go when it comes to equality, but moments like this show that change is possible when people stand up for what's right. So, let this story serve as a wake-up call. We all have a role to play in ensuring fairness and justice for everyone, no matter where they are or what they look like. The couple may have had a difficult experience, but their story carries a message we can all learn from. If this story made you think, made you question, or made you feel, don't let it stop here. Share this video, have these conversations, and stay aware of the ways injustice can manifest in everyday life. Only through collective awareness can we challenge the status quo and create a world that truly values fairness and respect for all. If you're passionate about stories that challenge the norm and spark meaningful change, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. We'll continue to bring you powerful stories that demand your attention and action. Don't miss out on our next video. Subscribe now to be part of the conversation.